In 1965, there was a lot of movement going on in the state of Alabama, and that movement was to get the right to vote. African American had been denied the right to vote, and the interest and the concern for all of the citizens in their right to vote was being challenged. And of course, in Perry County, the Perry County Civic League had been organized by Albert Turner Sr. And Albert Turner called in forces from throughout. He called in SCLC, called in SNCC, he called in Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young, and all the whole group of them came down to Marion, Alabama, and to Perry County, just as they were coming to Selma and Birmingham. But in Marion, the unique thing about Marion is that not only did the adults get involved in the sit-ins, the boycotts, and all of this, but we showed you pictures earlier of the Perry County Courthouse. So the citizens would come every day to the Perry County Courthouse to try to register to vote. And they were denied that right due to unequal testing that they had to take, and just the fact that they would have to come after hours to get registered. So because of that, that became a very serious issue for the African American in Perry County. And the marches began. They started boycotting the city and boycotting the stores, started doing the sit-ins. Adults were being arrested daily for participating in those particular marches. So the students at Lincoln School got involved and said, we want to be a part of this because it affects us as well. So those students organized and called in James Orange, and he came down and of course came in and organized those students by training them the nonviolent movement. And as they were being trained, they came back and implemented what they had learned. So one of those organizers was James Oaks, Roberta Bryant, and so many of those seniors during that 1965 at Lincoln Normal School. They decided they were going to march February 1965, and they marched from Lincoln School to Marion, Alabama, and they marched right along this street here. This is Pickens Street. They came from Lincoln Normal School on Clay, down by Lincoln School, Lincoln Street, Clay Street. They came down to Washington Street, came around the Perry County Courthouse, and they assembled in this area along this one block. And as they were singing and praying and marching, the chief of police stopped them and told them to stop. And of course, they did not go back to school, so they were all arrested. They were arrested and they were carried into this Perry County jail. And the jail that they were locked up in, and the fence is still there. 300 to 400 students were locked up. Those kids were carried to jails and prisons all over the state. Camp Selma. Some were carried to Lowndes County. Some were taken to Wilcox County. But those children were locked up, and as a result of that, parents were furious after the children were locked up and hauled off to these different prison camps. And they decided to do, and James Orange was arrested in this jail, and this is the same jail that James Orange was housed in and was locked up and being detained. He was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Now, after James Orange was locked up, they decided that they were going to do a night march because they wanted to protect James Orange. The word was that James Orange would lose his life that night in the jail. So they started they gathered together and they organized a night march. And that was on February 18th, 1965. When they organized this night march, the gathering would be at the Zion United Methodist Church, which is the same church that's to my left and your right. And that's the Zion United Methodist Church. That's where the night march took place on February 18th, 1965. And as they gathered together, police and state troopers came from all over the state of Alabama. There were, as I was told, there were over 100 state trooper cars rolled around. People were being deputized on site. The chief of police was giving anyone a badge that wanted a badge, and there were more police all over. KKK was here in numbers, and as they were singing in the church, they were gathering outside. The other forces and the police and state troopers and all of those are gathered outside. As they came out of the church to march to the jail, and that was the goal, they were going to march to the Perry County Jail, and they were going to stay there that night, marching and singing to ensure that James Orange would not be taken from the Perry County Jail and taken away from the jail and harm done to him. As they came out of the Zion United Methodist Church, they always kneeled to pray. When Reverend Dobyns kneeled to pray, he was the leader of the march that night, and as he was kneeled to pray, he was told to get up and go back inside the church. He refused to go back, and at that point, he was hit over the head with the billy club. His skull was cracked, and he was knocked unconscious, and was hospitalized as a result of that. That started the melee. Lights were shot out. There were reporters from New York. Their cameras were painted black. There were turmoil throughout this whole street. Bricks were being thrown. Jimmy Lee Jackson had brought his grandfather and his mother up to participate in the night march. Jimmy Lee was in Max Cafe, which is located behind Zion United Methodist Church. And his grandfather was being attacked by the police. Someone ran up and told Jimmy Lee that his grandfather was being attacked. Jimmy Lee comes down and tried to assist. Then they turn and attack Jimmy Lee. Jimmy Lee runs back into the cafe, and as he gets into the cafe, there's a struggle and an argument going on there, and the state trooper followed him back, and they got into a tussle. And as they wrestled and they tussled, Jimmy Lee was shot in the abdomen with the state trooper's revolver. Now, Jimmy Lee was taken to the Perry County Hospital, but they would not wait on him there. He had to be taken to the Good Samaritan Hospital. He was taken to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and Jimmy Lee died 8 days later. However, Jimmy Lee was recovering wonderfully well, and was being told he was going to be released. And some other things happened, but ultimately Jimmy Lee lost his life at the Good Samaritan Hospital. Now, as a result of that created such anger and such fury in the hearts of the citizens of Perry County that they said, let's take Jimmy Lee's body to Montgomery, to Governor Wallace, and show him the results of this brutality that the people of Perry County has sustained. Instead of that, it was suggested, no, we will not take his body to Montgomery, but we will march to Montgomery. We will bury him. They buried Jimmy Lee, had two services, one in Selma, but the final one was here in Marion, Alabama. And I was told over 9,000 people attended that service. They gathered out here, and when they got ready to leave to take his body to the cemetery, it started raining, and they all marched. They marched from Marion to the cemetery, and that's about 4.5 to 5 miles from here. That, I tell you, is the very second leg of the civil rights of this march to Montgomery. The first leg of that march was from Lincoln School, when those students joined in force and joined united and wanted to make a difference as well, and marched to this courthouse. The second leg of that march is when they marched from here with Jimmy Lee's body and carried his body to the Hurd Cemetery down on Highway 14. Then the march continued in Selma, starting in Selma to Montgomery, resulting in the Bloody Sunday and those other activities that led to the march from Marion to Selma to Montgomery. Now, as a result of that, as a result of all the tragedy and all of the sacrifices that have made, ultimately the Voting Rights Act bill was passed. And today we still stand on that. So I challenge each of you, if you're listening, although this is a short version, if you're listening to this, it is important that we understand those people that sacrifice so much, not just here in Perry County, but all over this country. People join forces, united, because united we stand and divided we fall. Thank you.